You're listening to the Home Staging Show podcast. I'm your host, Cindy Lin. This is a show where we talk about all things real estate, home staging, and selling a home to live and to sell. Welcome back to Season 8. This is Episode 1. Hey guys, welcome back to Season 8. I'm just so excited to bring the podcast back, and Happy New Year. So it is the new year. On the show today, I've invited Makayla Ervin. She's a success coach for mompreneurs, and she's going to be here to talk to us about mindset and eliminating self-limiting beliefs. This is something I really believe in. And I also want to take a moment to thank you for your patience and being so supportive throughout the years for Sage for More. As you may know from previous shows that I've decided to move to Paris for 10 months to pursue my master's degree in photography for the past year. And it was very intense to try to work and go to school full-time at the same time. But it's really great to be back after finishing my master's degree. I feel really refreshed. I got a new perspective on building businesses and working, and also just be a creative professional in general. I've been really working hard on our school, building out the courses, revamping some of the things, also trying to build better content for our blog and our podcast as well. But in general, I just want to say I'm so grateful for you and also for the opportunities that I have so far and the freedom that I have to pursue my passions. I know talking about mindset and stuff like this, like passion about your work or self-limiting belief sounds very woo-woo. But from my own experience building my own business, building a business that makes me feel fulfilled, that can serve others while serving me and my lifestyle, has really given me the freedom and purpose that I want and I feel is important. It also gives me the motivation to do better and to serve others. And that's why I really push it hard on the podcast and also in our courses like the 6-figure floor plan course. And speaking of which, I'll be opening up the enrollment for the next round of 8-week live 6-figure floor plan mastermind course again. So the class is going to be starting on Monday, February 11th. And we're going to open up the early bird enrollment on February 1st. And as our podcast listeners, you can use the coupon code podcast100 to get an additional $100 off. Again, that is podcast100, PODCAST 100, all one word. You just need to enter that when you check out. It's going to be on the right-hand side of the checkout page. And also, there are a couple of free goodies for you on our blog. So I've written a blog post about goal setting for 2019. And in that blog post, there's a free goal setting planner for 2019. You're going to come up with your word for 2019 and also kind of examine what worked last year and what's going to be your upcoming goal this year. So that's going to help you set your goals for the year. It also has accountability built in. So when you sign up to receive the planner, you're also going to submit your email address. So you're going to get a check-in email every 90 days this year to check in on your goals, to see if you're staying on course, that kind of good stuff. There's also a free marketing planner on the blog as well, which is published last week. You're just going to go to stageformore.com/blog and download both of these. I'm also going to put the links for both on the show notes for you. So I'm super excited to bring back the show today and kick off our new season today with Makayla. For Makayla, becoming a mom and staying home with her children really helped to bring that part of herself back to life again. She never planned to be a stay-at-home mom, and she likes working too much, but she couldn't imagine spending her days anywhere else. So she built a brand and her business to serve her lifestyle. She dabbled in several creative businesses before she found her true calling. She was so blessed by the freedom and fulfillment she found from channeling her gifts into a means of income for her family. She was determined to use her passion to educate, inspire, and coach other moms to do the same. So without further ado, let's start the show. So Makayla, thank you so much for coming on the show. Today's New Year's Eve, and I'm so excited to interview you. So tomorrow is the new year, and I always like to do some mindset type of work on the first episode for the season. So I know you do a lot of work with mindset with your clients. Can you tell us a little bit about your business?
Yeah, so my business or my brand is all about just helping moms become more than mom in the form of creating a business or creating a brand. A lot of times as moms, we lose ourselves in motherhood. Like as soon as we birth our first child, it's over. They're our whole world. And we just fall into that mindset of, I am not myself anymore. I am for lack of better words, a slave to this little tiny human being. And we love it. We wouldn't want to be anywhere else. But at the same time, there's like an emptiness inside of us that we've lost ourselves. And that was something that I experienced after I had my first child. And I didn't want to be stuck there. So that's something that I help moms with, is being able to create a brand or a business around who they are, while being available for their kids and being able to put them first.
I think that's great. And then, so why is mindset so important when it comes to starting or running a business?
Mindset and self-awareness and just knowing who you are and being on top of that is like the foundation for running a business. I always say this, if you're not good, your business won't be good either. And it's so true. Every single time I have had a huge struggle in my business, it's because I was not staying on top of who I am first. And it sounds very cliche, but there's no other way to put it. I mean, it's so true. You have to make sure that the way that you speak to yourself and your self-talk is positive and it's uplifting. You have to make sure that you're being aware and you're practicing mindfulness in being intentional in the things that you're putting into your life and the way that you are spending your days and spending your time. Because once you're able to recognize patterns of things that bring you joy and alternatively things that make you stressed, you'll be able to create like a much better quality of life. And from that, that's how you become successful in business.
I think that's great. And then, so how can somebody recognize these self-limiting beliefs?
Well, first of all, it just starts with being honest, because we could share, all day long the strategies or what you need to do and what journaling exercises you need to participate in and all these things. But if you're not committed to being honest with yourself and to, pouring it out on people or letting it all spill out, there's going to be a disconnect. And so first of all, just being honest with yourself and figuring out what it is. My two favorite questions, I said this in the last question, is asking myself, what brought me joy today? And I usually ask myself that at the end of the day. What brought me joy today? What was my favorite part of the day? And I'll write it down. Usually has to do with my kids or my clients that I worked with. But yeah, just writing down what brought you joy and then recognizing what was the most stressful part of your day, like what just really sent you into a spiral. And then figuring out how the next day you can put more of the thing that brought you joy in and do less of what stressed you out. I mean, obviously we could never do without stress 100%. That'd be really nice, right? But just figuring out what it is that stresses you out. And once you start doing this consistently, I always say, take it day by day, do it one day at a time. Once you start doing this consistently, you'll start seeing patterns and you'll start seeing things that consistently bring you joy and consistently stress you out. And you'll start being able to recognize that and to kind of diffuse the things that are going to send you into a spiral before they happen, or to make plans to put things in your life that are going to make you more joyful.
I love it, actually. And I love that you mentioned writing things down, because I'm a huge fan of journaling. I talk about journaling kind of all the time.
Oh my gosh, me too.
Yeah. And it's so nice when you write everything down, you can see it visually. It really helps, because I'm a visual person. It kind of makes sense. I'm a stager and now a photographer, because I respond to visual things. So I think it's a really important tool to help me to be able to visualize what are some of the things that really work for me and what are the things that don't work for me.
Oh, for sure. And it's really easy to see patterns that way too, because you're actually like looking at words that keep reappearing and stuff like that. So I am a huge advocate for journaling.
Yeah, definitely. And what are some of the self-limiting beliefs that hold us down?
I think some of the self-limiting beliefs that hold us down, especially as entrepreneurs, is the fraud syndrome is what they call, or the impostor syndrome, is feeling like we don't know enough to be an expert in our field. And, one of my favorite influencers for business, I was actually listening to her podcast the other day, and she said something that was just like, whoa, because she's like my idol. She's goals for me, And so to hear her say, she's a photographer as well. And so to hear her say that she still goes to weddings and feels like somebody's going to tap her on the shoulder and say, hey, you have no idea what you're doing, it meant a lot to me, because I was like, wow, you're like if I could make it to your level, I would have made it. And to hear her say that was kind of encouraging. It's kind of crappy too, because it was like the feeling never goes away. But it was comforting to know that even the best of the best, who we see as the best of the best, have those struggles and have those limiting beliefs of, hey, you probably don't know what you're talking about. So that's one of the biggest ones, is the self-limiting beliefs. Another one that reappears a ton is age, or I guess this one kind of goes on with the first one, skill set, but age being like, I'm either too young or too old to do this, or skill set, just, I haven't been doing it long enough. Somebody's been doing it longer than me. I mean, I could write a book on all the self-limiting beliefs. We actually, at my meetup that we do once a month here, we do a limiting belief exercise where we write down our biggest limiting belief, like the one that is just so present in our ear for that month. We write it down, whether it be, I'm too young to do this, or I don't know enough to do this, or whatever. We write it down on a piece of paper, and then we flip it over to the backside and we change the story. We say, what, because I'm young, I have plenty of time to make progress. Or what was the other one I said? I don't know enough yet would be, I have plenty of time to learn and have a fresh take, or whatever. We just change the story to where our limiting belief becomes an empowering belief. And then we go pin it up to a board for everybody to see the empowering side. So doing exercises like that, even just in a journal, writing down all of the lies that are in your head, all the limiting beliefs, and then changing the story. That's something that I have to do periodically whenever they just kind of bottle up and there's so many limiting beliefs,
Yeah, no, I hear you. I definitely been guilty of both. And I think, because I started my business when I was very young. I was like 25, really. And I was pretty much the youngest everywhere I went, because in my county, the average age of a real estate agent was 55 years old. And I was 25 at the time. I remember I went to
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I remember I went to a networking event. There's this whole month, every networking event I went to, everybody asked me how old I was.
Oh, that's the worst.
Yeah, so it was very like nerve-wracking when I first started my business. People were just like, "Oh, you're like a child." But yeah, I think as time goes by, it makes it much easier. I mean, imposter syndrome, I still have it from time to time, but I think as I get older, it does get easier to cope with.
Yeah.
And I think at a certain point of your career, you will realize you just stop caring about it, because you realize that you're still doing good work. Because I used to say this to my sister all the time. I feel like our staging is not good enough. It's not pretty enough or whatever. She's like, well, if that's true, then no one will book us, right? And I was like,
Exactly. Yeah.
you're right. And every time I had these doubts, and I think about that conversation we had, because my sister's like, if we're not good, then no one will book us. So I think that is true. And I really feel strongly about what you said about changing the story. That was something that I worked on with my business coach. It was a very important turning point, I think, in my business. My coach worked with, I think she was a Tony Robbins coach at some point. And then so she was really pushing for kind of that story in your head kind of thing. And I really do agree with it, because I do think that if you keep telling yourself you cannot do it, you won't do it, because you'd be too scared to try. But if you write down in your journal, because what I usually do is I just kind of brain dump everything in my journal. I write out
my favorite.
I write out the worst thing in my head. And sometimes it gets so, I don't know what's a better word for this, but it gets violent sometimes. I'm just basically scratching the paper and then just dribbling really hard. But then afterward, I feel much better, and I can start rationalizing what I actually want to say, and then start working on changing that story for myself. Because I think that's the thing, because we feel paralyzed by things that we cannot control and we don't know. Especially, I think most of us who run our own business, we want everything to be in control. But in reality, we can't, because I can't control the economy. I can't control the clients. So I think these are both very good reminder for ourselves that these are the two self-limiting beliefs that are very common. Pretty much everybody would have it, no matter how big their career is or how small their career is. So I think it's a really good reminder. And so in your experiences, how has having clarity changed your business and your clients' businesses?
Having clarity is another one of those foundational things. People thrive on consistency, and your audience is going to thrive on consistency. So the consistency has to start with you. And if you're not clear about who you are as a person and who you want your brand to be or who you want your brand to represent, it's going to be really confusing. A lot of times people start their business by trying to find what it is that's trending or what it is that people want a lot of right now or what somebody else is doing that is working for them. And so they just start grasping for all these things that are fleeting. They're trends, they're fads, they're things that are not going to stick. Instead of figuring out who they are and who they want to be and then relating the trend or relating the fad or whatever to who they are. And it results in a ton of confusion and a ton of inconsistency, which is not attractive to a buyer or a client, no matter what field you're in. And so having that clarity and knowing who you are first is what's going to, make you special and set you apart from everybody else. It's what's going to make you relate to people, on a deeper level than just what it is, what trade you offer or what service you offer to people.
I love that. I think that was something that me and my business coach really worked on as well. I think clarity is so important. I love how you said that most people start a business because of a trend. And we've seen a lot of that actually. A lot of businesses start because of trend, like cupcake shops, because cupcake was the trendy food of the year or of that few years. And then once that trend fades, a lot of cupcake shops went out of business because they simply cannot sustain being in that trend anymore. So I think, clarity is an incredibly important tool. Personally, for me, my business completely shifted once I had that clarity on what kind of business I want. So when it comes to like your clients that are struggling with gaining clarity for their goals and their business, how do you help them to find that direction for themselves?
Well, with my high-end clients, we usually work through a whole 2-3 weeks of self-discovery. And it's funny because usually they get really aggravated at first because they hire me as a business coach and they're like, when do we get to the good stuff? When do we get to the
This is the good stuff.
Yes. And it's funny that we talk about this and I tell them before I get with each client I enroll, I get more and more specific in the pre-enrollment where I'm like, the first couple of weeks or 3 weeks, we will be digging deep into you. And the harder you resist it, the longer it's going to take. But I have tried to skip through it with the clients that don't really care to know about themselves. And that's just, it doesn't work that way. You have got to get really clear. So we usually do a ton of brain dumping. Like you said, we do journaling exercises. I'm really heavy into meditation and just really getting clear on what it is that you want out of life. And then asking them, instead of what kind of brand do you want to have or what kind of business do you want to have, it's what do you stand for? What are things that you're passionate about? Because that's what's going to give you that really engaging content. That's what's going to help you relate to your clients and your audience on a personal level versus just being a billboard. You're going to be more like a magazine. That's my favorite parallel is, instead of just advertising all the time, you're going to really know who you are. And so you're going to be able to appeal to other people who are like you by creating this magazine-like brand. So we just do a ton of digging for the first 2 or 3 weeks.
I really love that though, because I think for my course, our signature course, Six Figure Floor Plan, that's actually the first thing that I make students do.
We're so mean.
I know, but I really think it's really important. I mean, because in the beginning, I actually have a secret module, the module 0. It's kind of like a surprise when students sign up. So even though the module 1 doesn't start immediately when they sign up, but they can work on their mindset. So I think it's really important. I think you really need to know your why. Like, why are you running this business? Because I get a lot of inquiries from people who want to get into this business and they're like, oh, I just want to be creative. But there's so many ways to be creative. Why this particular business? And what are some of the goals in your life? Because I think one thing I really learned the hard way was that I work blindly toward this goal because I think hitting this revenue goal will make me happy. Because my dad had his own business as well. And his business he had a big business in a sense that he had 100 people working under him. I mean, they have company stationery and a receptionist. I mean, like that looked really cool. I grew up in that environment. But then what I don't see is how hard my dad struggled. Like, because we didn't really have these kind of business conversation until I was much older and had my own business. So when I start recognizing that for myself, I realized that's not the business model I want. I want a very small business model, very simple. And I want my business to serve my lifestyle and not the other way around. And I think in my 20s, I really chased these monetary goals blindly and not realizing actually that's not what I wanted. I want other things in my life. I want to be able to travel. I want to be able to do, X, Y, and Z. And so once that clarity kicked in, it really shifted my business. So that's why I really pushed for that in my own courses. I know it's very different than what other people seeing on the market. Because most home staging courses is like, this is what you do, X, Y, and Z for like vacant stuff or for redesign home. They don't really talk about these kind of mindset thing. But I think it's really ignored, and it's so important because your business is an extension of you. And if you don't have that right mindset of how you want to expand, how you want to grow, it's not going to grow the way you want. And you're just going to be very unhappy eventually.
Absolutely. You'll just end up in therapy. You'll have a lot of money, but you'll end up in therapy.
But I think that, I had a business, well, I had several business coach, but the one that I worked with longest, like she really worked on tweaking my mindset. It really felt like therapy. Like there were sessions where I like cry.
I know. I feel like an entrepreneurial therapist sometimes because we as business coaches, that's kind of what we do. It's so funny because we'll dig. I know everything about my clients, all of their dirty secrets, and it's because it's all related, and people try to separate business and personal, and it's not. You don't do that.
It's impossible. It's impossible. I think any little dark secret you feel like you have, or you feel like an imposter, or you have this insecurity, it all shows up in your business. Like you don't realize it shows up in your branding, it shows up the way you talk to your clients, and client senses it. It's something that I think is so important to do that work on yourself. And it is right. It is a bit like therapy. And I always tell people that because I started my business basically flat. Because after college, I worked for Mercor for a year. And then after that, I basically jumped into real estate. And then so I really I always say that I basically grew up with my business because in a way that's very true because through my business, I recognize what kind of person I want to be, what kind of business I want to be, what kind of life I want to do. What kind of work I want to do and what kind of life I want to lead. And so it took a lot of work on myself with my business coach before I get all these clarity and have the right goals for my life and for my business.
Right.
Yeah. And so I do feel that a lot of times as creative women, we do put these self-limiting thoughts onto ourselves. And especially women, I think a lot of us feel guilty about charging their worth. So I certainly have done this many times when I first started my business. So how can someone harness their purpose and empower themselves to monetize their talents?
Ooh, that's a loaded one. I
know. And money is always such a loaded question, but it's so important because a lot of us do get afraid to charge our worth. Even now, like we transition our business into courses, I'm still like, is this too expensive? Are we charging not enough? Am I packing enough value into the course? There's always these kind of like doubts. Like, am I good enough? Are people going to like this? Or are they going to absolutely hate it and tear me apart on social media kind of thing?
And I think, honestly, I totally agree what you're saying about charging your worth. My business coach that I hired to help me really, really launch my business, that's her thing, is charging your worth. Her program is called Permission to Charge. And she is all about helping female coaches charge their worth. And I knew whenever I started my coaching business that I did not want to start at the bottom and work my way to the top. And I knew that I was worthy. I just had to figure out how to, articulate that in my brand as well. So yeah, I think that is so right about how women really struggle with this, obviously, because my coach has built a whole business on it. But, I think it starts when we're little, especially our generation has been raised to hush and to look pretty and to not put ourselves out there. And, I think that our parents meant well, But I think that the generation as a whole, not every single person was raised that girls are to, do the practical thing and to play it safe, and honestly just discouraged to be brave. And it's really unfortunate. And, I'm a mom of two little boys, and society says that I get to raise them brave no matter what. But I really want to focus on telling my boys and modeling for my boys that girls can do everything that they do. There's equal opportunity for everybody. And so I think the most important thing for people, and for women in particular, to be able to harness their purpose and really to empower themselves to make money, to charge their worth, is mindset. It just goes back to mindset and really working on your relationship with money and how you view it, and that you're valuable. Does that answer your question a little bit?
I do. And I think you brought a very important point with your business coach. It's the keyword permission, because that really struck me. I mean, I grew up in Taiwan, and my parents were not, I mean, they're modern people, but in some ways very, very traditional. And I do feel that a lot of big milestones in my life happened because I simply, in a way, asked for permission, or I simply ignore the urge of asking for permission. It sounds really weird. I feel like stupid telling this story.
No, go for it.
But I remember I had this random conversation with my boyfriend at the time, and I went to visit Scotland in July during the rainy
Scotland.
season. It's great. It's a beautiful country. I love Edinburgh.
Yes.
And it's gorgeous, but it's wet. It's cold all the time.
All the time.
And then we were texting. I just said this in passing. I was just like, must be the dumbest idea to go to Scotland in the raining season. And he just wrote me back in a very typical, I guess, millennial way. It was like, well, because you're you. You just do what works for you. You don't have to care about what other people think. And that really struck me because from then on, I feel this weird sense of freedom.
Thanks, boyfriend.
Yeah, to do what I want to do. And then it's weird. I just feel really silly telling the story. But I do feel like a lot of times we do feel the sense of need to ask for permission to do things that we want. And it took me a very long time to shed that, because that was very embedded in my culture. I remember when I first started my business, or actually before I started my business, I was having this conversation with my parents, because at the time, when I first graduated college, it was kind of like the bottom of job market at the time. And I could not really find a job. I was very determined to work for a nonprofit to do development. And I just could not find a job, because every job, with my experience at the time, every job I would apply for, it's basically the person who's interviewing me, because I had that much experience working through college and with the Marine Corps. And I was like really frustrated. And they're like, well, you can start your own business, And at the time, I scoffed at that idea. I was like, what? Like, open a boba shop? Like, what? And then I thought about it. I was like, yeah, why not? Because both my parents had their businesses, and both of their parents, like both sets of my grandparents, had their own businesses as well. So I thought, oh, okay, why not? And then so I stumbled upon real estate. And then I started as a real estate agent, and I realized that actually there's this business called home staging, and I think I can do well in. And so that's how I got started. But again, I feel like now thinking back, it was in a way asking for permission, because the longest time I thought the way that I was brought up was very cookie cutter. Like there was a very formula kind of way where everybody progressed in life. Basically, you study and you do well in school, because we had entrance exam into high school and college at the time I was growing up. So your test score really determined how well, in a way, you will do in life later on. Because if you don't get into a good high school, you don't get into a good college. You don't get into a good college, you won't be able to find a really good job. That's just the way it was. It was very much based on academic in my culture. So I really feel, in a way, I have these invisible shackles. Like I really could not be outside the box. And I try very hard. So I'm really glad that you brought up the word permission, because I do feel, as stupid as it sounds, but I did feel that I really had to ask for permission for a lot of different things in my life. And that stopped me when I couldn't get the yes.
Absolutely. And I always tell my clients too, is that you're never alone. Like your ideas are valid. You're unique. And there's a bunch of unique, like different traits that make you unique when they combine together. But the thing is the things you're interested in, the things that you feel, the things you're passionate about, like other people are passionate or feel or are good at these things too. And so whenever you start talking about them and whenever you get ideas about monetizing them, it's valid. You just have to start talking about it and putting yourself in the position to find these people. And I'm just a firm believer that if there's a desire in your heart, if you've been given some kind of desire or some kind of passion, it's there for a reason. And you will do yourself a disservice if you don't find out why. So that's kind of my argument for anything. Whenever people are like, oh, I don't know if this is a good idea, I'm just like, are you like passionate about it? Yes. Okay, awesome. There you go. It's valid. Let's start working towards it. I'm very much like a fairy godmother, like dreams come true and, like let's move towards it. But you got to strategize and you got to move towards it. And you can't just sit around and daydream about it. So you have to validate things yourself. You have to give yourself permission yourself before anybody else is going to think it's valid. So it's all mindset.
It is all mindset, because a lot of times it's that self-limiting belief again. It's that, well, sometimes I get criticism is, oh, you're doing this podcast because you want to sell courses or whatever. I understand that criticism, but at the same time, this is a free podcast, okay? And the other thing too is everybody's got to eat. So if I don't sell courses, how am I going to put food on my table?
Oh, for sure. It kills me when business owners criticize other business owners for charging. I'm just like, yeah, no, it's free content and it's providing value and it's serving how you were meant to serve. There's so many different ways to serve, paid and unpaid.
I agree with that very much so. And I really do feel very passionate about providing value to your potential clients. In a way, you're also proving to your clients what can you bring to the table. So I do feel that there's this thing about money that really trip people up. It's so greedy if you're charging people for it or something like that. For me, it's very practical. If I don't make money, I don't eat. I can't travel, I can't pay bills, kind of thing. Everybody is the same. We all have to work. We all have to monetize. It's just the way you do it. It doesn't have to be very like icky and salesy and kind of thing. And for me, I don't like being icky and salesy and kind of, I'm not really good at it, to be honest. There are people who can sell ice to Eskimos. I'm not that person. For me, it's about relationship. Like I really value the relationship that I can build through our blog, our podcast, which is free, and also our paid courses, because the relationship with the students is very special. I feel it sounds super cheesy, but I feel super honored that they chose me. I mean, there's so many courses out there nowadays, but they chose me, they chose my program, and they trusted me enough to give me money for it. And so for me, it's a responsibility that I need to deliver what they are looking for. I mean, within a reasonable time frame, obviously, within reasonable parameter. If they want to be $1 million business in a month, that's not possible. But we can find ways to build toward that, to 6-figure, 7-figure. It's doable. There are people out there who are doing it. So when people criticize me about trying to monetize what I do, I just feel like you don't really understand how business works. You don't have the right mindset, because at the end of the day, you have to make sure your business is profitable.
Right. They're not your
market.
We're
not charity. Yeah, we're not running charities. If you want to create a business that makes you happy, money is going to be a big part of it. And I feel like a lot of times people feel like, oh, it's so dirty to talk about money, or so embarrassing to talk about money. You need to learn how to talk about money, especially with your clients. If your clients come by and say, well, I think you're too expensive, you need to be able to defend your own value. So I think we need to shed that mindset that, money is embarrassing or it's dirty to talk about or it's greedy. There's nothing wrong about it, because all of us need money to eat. That's basically it. I personally am single, so I don't have family to feed. But if I have a family to feed, that's really important. I'm not going to let my children to go starve.
Yeah, I think that it's a generational thing, but I think we're coming out of it. I honestly think that we're in the age of the entrepreneur and people are starting to learn their worth. It takes some people longer than others, but I'm like very hopeful that we're coming out of this people are just more aware of their money. They're more aware of their finances. People are getting out of debt and they're investing, and it's really exciting. And women are taking over. We actually have a speaker this month that's coming to the meetup that I lead for moms here in the DFW area. And she's very passionate about women in finance, and she's a financial advisor for women-owned businesses. And she was just like going on and on with me when we were interviewing about how, women are currently control like 60% of the money in the world. And I was like, that's amazing, because that's over half. And that would have been unheard of even 10 years ago. So it's just crazy.
It is crazy. And actually single women in particular, are dominating the housing market right now, which is crazy.
I know. Go girls.
I know. I think it's really crazy because I remember, this sounds silly, but I remember going on a date with this guy who's about 10 years older than me. So I'm almost 40, so he's in his 50s. But I was talking to him. I think also he just got a divorce, so he's a bit bitter about women. But he was like, yeah, women today, they don't need to be married because they don't need a husband to rely them on income. And I was like, WTF? What did you just say?
This is our date.
But I agree that it's a generation thing, because in my mom's generation, it is very different. My mom was a very independent woman, or still is a very independent woman. Like, she had her own business. And my dad knew that before they got married. And he kind of gave her a hard time about it after they were married, which is really unfortunate. But for me, I love that my mom persisted. Like, she felt that she needed to work, even part-time, because she needed to work. Like, she would feel good about herself, about working. It was important to her. And I think that really distilled the sense of how work is important. Like, you need to do work that is fulfilling in me. Because for me too, I mean, I think work is very important because most of us spend probably a third of our lives, if not more, working. So I really feel like you need to do work that you're passionate about.
Absolutely. You're singing my song, girl. I am all about that.
I don't know if you're a new audience listening to this, or like, these are so woo-woo, but
I know. Weirdos. This is how you become successful.
It sounds as cheesy, but I mean, it is, because I really do think that if you have the mindset, it really shifts things for you. It changes your beliefs, and it makes, I think if people always have the negative mindset, it's like, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that. So without going out to get jobs, you already said no to yourself. And that's going to change how you're able to go after clients, because clients sense that if they're not confident about selling your own work, your client's going to be like, yeah, I don't think so.
Not for me. Yeah.
I really love that for your course for mompreneurs, you really push your students to create a business plan. I think it's a really important tool. I recently added into one of my courses as well, the launcher course, because I just personally, when I did my master program, they made us write one as well. And I used to think business plans are stupid because they're really annoying and boring.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of research involved. But actually, I realized it's a really important tool. So in your experiences, why is it a really effective tool for new entrepreneurs?
Well, because I think for myself in particular, and the more and more I talk about it, the more people are like, oh my gosh, me too. Entrepreneurs, first of all, we have what's called idea-itis, the majority of us. And we get all of these ideas in the wee hours of the morning. We'll like shoot up out of our sleep and we're like, I've got an idea. And I want to like pursue it right now. And we get so caught up in that hamster wheel of idea after idea and dream after dream. And we just get stuck in an idea coma. And we're like constantly dreaming up these new things that we never take action on. And again, it goes back to not having clarity, and it goes back to the inconsistency and kind of projecting that inconsistency onto our audience and potential clients and stuff. And so if we don't have a plan, if we don't have it written down, it's just going to be chaos. It's going to be mass chaos. And so myself, as a very type B, very creative, always thinking of new stuff, I really, like you, resented the whole idea of a business plan first. I'm like, no, this is my business. I can do whatever the heck I want. I don't need a plan to tell me what to do. And the more and more I got into it, I was like, okay, I'm getting nowhere. I'm getting nowhere in my business. But anyways, that is how you move. It's having a plan. That's how you get things done. And when you're a business owner, especially a solopreneur, you are in charge of everything. So you have to be type B and type A. You have to be the dreamer and the doer. You have to do it all. And so creating a plan, it's not holding you back. It's not limiting you. This is something that, I actually teach as flexible planning, is having a plan in place so that you have steps and you're starting to move in a direction. And then everything else can kind of ebb and flow as the year goes on or as your business grows and shifts. But if you don't have a plan, you won't have those first few steps to get you moving, and you're not going to go anywhere fast. And so flexible planning is the idea that I like to preach, and that you still have that flexibility and the freedom of being an entrepreneur, but you also have a plan, as a business owner, to get you moving and to start achieving things and moving you closer to your goals.
Yeah, I agree. It's a bit like journaling,
Yes,
right? It's
back
just,
to the journaling.
yes, writing everything down. Basically, anything we need to learn in life, we learn in kindergarten.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's awesome. Yes, journaling and writing things down is the only way. And you can type. If you're a digital person, type it down. But you have got to put it on paper to get it moving. I used to think like, oh, everybody learns differently. Writing is something that you've got to do. If you're an entrepreneur, you've got to get it on paper. It doesn't have to be eloquent or beautiful or, novel worthy or anything like that. But you've just got to get your plans to paper or you'll forget, especially if you're a mom, we forget everything.
And then, so I know in your courses, you really help women who are doing their business or their ideal business as a side hustle right now, and then transition into a full-time business. So how does someone do that? How do they take a side hustle and turn that into a full-time business?
So the ladies that I work with, most of them, and I say most because there's always like a unicorn, but most of them started their business with the intent of, they had big dreams, whether they told somebody or didn't tell somebody. They did not start it just to make some side cash. They wanted it to blow up. Most of them have dreams of bringing their husband home from their 9 to 5, retiring their husband, and just having this, togetherness with their family, where they have financial freedom and freedom of their time. But everybody starts somewhere, right? And so a lot of times it does start out as more of like a side hustle, especially from the income. It's very much a side hustle. But again, a lot of them have started with no clarity. They've started looking at trends, and they've started they've skipped over the mindset and skipped over the clarity and skipped over the purpose part of it. And so a lot of times it's bringing them back. Like some of my clients have been working on their business for 7 years, 7 years, and just making a part-time income whenever they could be doing something so much more. So a lot of times it's like reeling them back in and taking them back to the basics and saying, listen, and just finding out who they are and what they want out of their business and what they stand for is kind of how we get started and get them from their side hustle or this business that they're working on full time, but it's only making a side hustle income, to an actual full blown brand that's scalable and that's leverageable.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think also planning, it's an important factor, like having the business plan. And also in a way, I think it's advantageous to start maybe as a side hustle because you can really take your time, or not take too much time, but you can really do a lot of research and then planning before that. I mean, because some of our students took my course probably a year ago, and now they're just starting out their business and they're doing pretty well because they took the time to really set the foundation pieces and really figure out what would be the right market for them to enter. And maybe they work with somebody local for a little bit, kind of get the experience. And so I think having that ramp to go up, it's really helpful.
Absolutely. And I think too, a lot of people go into the business with an idea of they're creating one business and they box themselves into a corner. They can only do one thing for the rest of forever. And a thing that I coach my moms on is building a brand, not just a business. So figuring out again what it is that you stand for and what it is that you're passionate about, so that you don't have to whenever you're ready to move into another phase of business ownership, you don't have to quit the business that you had and start over from scratch somewhere else. Having a brand that speaks to all the things that you're passionate about, and then building one facet at a time. So for me, it was brand photography was the first thing I worked on because I loved helping people with their business. And from there, I turned into business coaching. And now I do both in tandem, a little bit more focus on business coaching. And then from there, I'm working with moms on living intentionally and having a business that makes their life intentional. Well, soon we'll be branching out on another facet that we're not really announcing yet, but all about intentional living. So it's like all of these things are things that I'm passionate about. And I haven't boxed myself into a corner. I'm just Makayla Ervin. And these are the things that I love and that I've been put on this earth to serve people with. So I can grow and scale, and the possibilities are endless for me. And that's what I help my moms with as well, is building a brand that's based on them and who they are and what they're passionate about, and then working at one facet at a time to where they don't have a cap, they don't have a ceiling, and the possibilities are endless for them.
I love that. And I think, again, that's just like what you're doing is you're really helping them to break down the process into actionable steps, into smaller pieces where they can achieve. And I think that's really important, because I think I made this mistake as well. When I started my business, I wanted to do everything. Like I really had a vision for a much bigger business, and I tried to do all of them at once, and I failed miserably. And I learned that I should just focus on one thing and establish my reputation, and then expand from there. And that was a much more successful endeavor.
Yes, we want the end result at the beginning. And we fail to realize that everybody starts somewhere and you've got to build.
Exactly. And so when the business is really new, how can we build an authentic brand that grows organically?
I think that it just starts again from the basics and figuring out what it is that you stand for. And really, instead of trying to separate your business and personal, instead of trying to put on a business face whenever you're working on your business, it's being authentic. I mean, our society and people thrive on authenticity because we hop on Facebook or we hop on Instagram or we hop on LinkedIn and we see all these perfectly polished profiles, and we see everybody sharing their best and everybody hiding their worst. And it becomes really, really defeating. I mean, I am a firm believer that the fact that mental health issues have spiraled out of control quickly following the rise of social media, I don't think that was a mistake. And so whenever you set yourself apart by being authentic and being real with people and just saying, this is who I am, this is what I love to do, and this is how I want to help you, that is where people are attracted to you. So instead of saying like, I'm so-and-so and I want to have a cupcake business. Well, okay, that's so great. You're probably really good at making cupcakes and really good at decorating them or whatever. But what is it that you stand for? Like, how do you want to help people with these cupcakes? And it sounds so silly, but there is always something underneath the surface that's like just brilliant. It's just a streak of brilliance. And all it is people being honest about who they are and how they want to serve people. That's all it is. And so telling your story and being authentic with people is how you build a brand over just building a business.
That's great. I really love that. So it's the end of our hour together, and I just want to ask you one last question. What is the one top tip you'll give to new business owners, or actually any business owners, how to gain clarity in their life?
I think just doing a huge, big, fat brain dump. That's my favorite thing. And that's the tip that I give people when they first start working with me is take a day off from your business, or a week off if you can stand to take a week, but take some time off, grab a pen and a blank piece of paper or a blank Google Doc or a Word doc, whatever you feel most comfortable. And just ask yourself the question, what do I stand for? And then like, what do I want out of life? What is my biggest dream? If you could dream so big and you couldn't fail, what would be your biggest dream for your business? And just ask yourself really big, really deep questions like that, and go to town, start writing or typing until you cannot think of anything else to type. And then from there, just start looking for patterns, look for things that are standing out to you over the others and go for it. Start going for those things. Another really big tip is to surround yourself with people that have similar goals. You can't get very far in life if you're just constantly being bombarded by negativity. You've got to intentionally put yourself in situations and places where people are kind and uplifting and encouraging, because you'll get really defeated if you don't.
That's great. Thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure.
All right, so that's it for today's show. Thank you so much for listening. If you haven't left a review on iTunes, please do so. It's going to help other people to find our show and to help our show grow. If you have any questions, feedback, and suggestions, you can comment on the show notes and I'll answer as soon as I can. You can find the show notes by going to our website at www.stageformore.com/podcast. That's it. Have a fantastic week and happy staging.